So greetings to you. I'm Tim Costello and I'm very privileged to be addressing you on this Father's Day. What a Father's Day. I'm a father. I won't be seeing my kids. They're living separately and they've grown up. Neither will I, as a grandfather, be seeing my only granddaughter. She lives in Warrnambool with my son and his wife. So this is a very different and very limited Father's Day, which is why I'm thrilled that you at least can come together by Zoom and remember your fathers and to at least celebrate in some way. Well, this is a global pandemic. I'm sure many of you have been very aware of that global consciousness, looking at stories from your home countries of infection rates, of death rates. Never before has the world had such a global consciousness. All of us knowing we have one common enemy, a microscopic, invisible virus. And that one common enemy is causing such a profound shutdown of our lives. The things that make us human, which we particularly celebrate on Father's Day, are the things of hugging, of singing, of being together and talking, of enjoying each other's company. Those things are dangerous because of this microscopic virus. And so in lockdown, we're all struggling to say, what does it mean to be human if we can't sing and dance together and hug our fathers and be together? What does this mean? Well, for many of you with children in years 7 to 10, your kids are at home. And it's almost the opposite problem to me not being able to see my kids on Father's Day. Maybe you're seeing too much of your kids. Maybe it's intense and emotional to be doing schoolwork on a laptop with sometimes faulty broadband and connections in cramped housing conditions is too intense. I am sure the stress, the feeling of being captured and locked down actually complicates being a father and keeping your sense of peace, of perspective, of staying out of quarrels that just blow up out of nowhere when people are cramped together and share common space and are feeling irritable and locked down because it is unnatural. The first thing to say about this is it's so unnatural for your kids. I feel for them. The fun things about being at school are the sport, are the hanging out with their mates, are the high points of a school year, formals and graduations and things you actually look forward to. All of them gone for your kids. Locked down, still having classes, but classes that have stripped back the things that actually make school fun. So I can imagine the intense feelings that many of you might have. And with intense feelings as fathers, the first thing I want to say is recognize this is really hard. Cut yourself a leave pass by recognizing that your feelings of being the provider, the disciplinarian, the person who's respected, when you're thrown together and with kids who are feeling irritable and cut off, and you are too, there are moments that out of nowhere explode. Maybe later you go, how did I end up in that argument? Why did I say things, shout at them in ways that before I wouldn't have because I was out of the house, I could take a walk. This time is really hard. And when you focus on it being hard, the next question is, you focus on the dangers that we often turn to just to deal with the hard situation, our irritability, our anxiety. Those dangers may have come about because you've lost your job, may have come about because you, if you're in an essential job, you worry that you're going to get infected. Is the personal protective equipment enough? As we know, people in hospitals, in frontline jobs, in aged care have got infected. Their lives have been on the line. You may be a family that has family members in South Sudan, in Iraq, in the Philippines, and you're sending money back and they're depending on you. And now there isn't money. And your sense of self-esteem as being a provider here, sending money back to families who are in even poorer situations and desperate situations, you've got a loss of that sense of self-esteem. I know a lot about this because I've been to South Sudan. I had South Sudanese leaders on the phone to me just last week about the floods in South Sudan, about 1.3 million people in that region being at risk of hunger and starvation with floods. I have been in the Philippines. I have been in Iraq. I was there outside Mosul before ISIS was defeated. I was there in the refugee camps. I've been in those refugee camps in Lebanon and Jordan. And I know many Australians of Assyrian, Filipino, South Sudanese, other backgrounds are sending money back. And you feel, I'm failing. The money isn't there. Even with JobKeeper, it's far less than you're earning. So what becomes the danger? The danger becomes the things that ease our pain. Look, I know this. Being bored, I know I can crack a bottle of wine, not intending to drink it all, and because I'm bored, an hour or two later it's all gone. And then there's the temptation for a second bottle. I know these dangers. I know the dangers for particularly men going, I'm bored. Maybe I can make some extra dollars. I'll go online with sports betting. They promise me if I'm ahead at half time in my sports betting, a guaranteed win. There's some extra money. I know that whether it's alcohol, whether it's gambling, starting to deal with the irritability, the pain, by these means leads to greater problems. And it leads to not often being a good father, because these dangers can become addictions. And the very act of being a good father is overwhelmed. I know that being under the same roof and locked down with your kids is a time of needing to say, how am I speaking to them? How am I treating my wife, my partner? Am I raising my voice? Am I allowing my emotions to overcome me in this unreal hard time where I'm not feeling great worth in being the provider that I am? I know when you've come from other cultures to Australia, just learning the culture in terms of what's allowed to discipline your kids is really tricky and difficult. Other places, fathers, no problem. Physical disciplining of kids, using physical means to call them into line. And yet we know in Australia there are laws about this. You can be accused of child abuse, of assault. These cultural differences of just coping here, particularly cramped together, are very real and make fathering when you're living between cultures even more difficult. Well, it's for that reason I say, give yourself a leave pass by saying, this is really hard. Secondly, talk to other men on the phone, on Zoom. Be vulnerable and say, this is hard. How are you coping? What have you found that you do when you're getting really annoyed? Cabin fever of being locked in if you're not working. Loss of self-esteem of not providing in the way that you once did. Talk to other men. For men, it's really hard to be vulnerable. With 2 sons, I discovered that the best moments to talk to them was when we were driving together or maybe at a sporting event. Women, when they say, let's have a coffee, know what they're going to do. They're going to sit down with each other and emotionally for the next hour or two talk about how they're feeling. Men, we say, let's have a coffee, and we drink it in 2 minutes and we go. We don't find it easy to talk about our feelings, our vulnerabilities. Can I say in COVID, to be a good father, a good husband, talking with other men, being vulnerable, saying it's hard is really important. And remember that we will get through this. I remember my father, when I was about 13, taking me out of school for half a day to buy a suit. There'd been a death in the family, and my father wanted me to go to a funeral. Very hard to have funerals. Only 10 people are allowed at the moment. But back then, my father took me shopping to buy a suit. Not the first suit, not the cheapest suit. He took time and he bought me a suit. And I went to this family funeral dressed up in the first suit I'd ever owned. As I look back on that, I realized that what my father was doing was saying to me, this is like a rite of passage. You're no longer just a boy. You're expected to look like a man, to fulfill duties to the wider family by attending this funeral and looking the part. I now look back on that and think that was actually more important than being in school for that half day. That rite of passage of my father actually helping me buy a suit and say, now these are your duties and you are growing up and we expect more of you, was really important. In the fathering, in these tough times, think about what your kids in years 7 to 10 need. What would be a rite of passage for them? A deep conversation with them, sharing something with them you haven't ever told them before, sharing a struggle you had at their age and what life taught you. Being that sort of father in these really difficult moments is so important. Well, to this school community in this tough time, a multicultural school community, I think all of us need to acknowledge we're fragile humans just trying to get by. Every one of us is a fragile human trying to get by. Let's share, let's be vulnerable, let's admit the feelings of anger, anxiety, irritability, they're very real, and let's try and find ways together in sharing those feelings to be better fathers. This unusual Father's Day, I hope it's still a wonderful Father's Day, and may there be many more for you. Thank you.